And you should see a cheesy picture of me with my thumbs up. Yeah, great.
Yep.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Lee. I am the host of this lovely podcast that you can see on your screen. I've been hosting the podcast now for 6 years, and it started off when I was a small offshoot agency, and we were looking for design agencies that we could code for. We would be a white label design agent. So we'd be a white label development agency for the designers. They could do the design, we could do the code. So we figured the best way of growing our audience and our credibility was to launch a podcast. So we did just that. And I showed up once a week and I interviewed somebody in the industry, maybe a marketing specialist or another design agency owner, etc. And over time, it kind of built up to the extent where we've now got tens of thousands of listeners around the world. It's led to loads of opportunities, such as we have our own yearly event that people travel around the world to come to, which is phenomenal. We've grown a massive Facebook group of thousands again of agency owners. And we've since been able to stop doing development because this podcast actually pays for itself, which has been wonderful. So it's been an interesting journey, but over the last 6 years, it's certainly given us the opportunity to grow the original business with those leads, etc. But then over time, as it's gotten bigger than we ever could have imagined, it's also led to complete new opportunities that we would never have dreamt of. And I want to first of all start with what I did wrong. And that was that I spent too much on getting started on podcasting. If you're considering starting a podcast, what you really want to do is validate it for, say, 6 months. You can bootstrap. We've just been talking about cost cutting, haven't we? You can bootstrap the launch of your podcast. There is no need to spend hundreds of pounds on technical equipment. And that's exactly what I did. I got way too excited to say, I'm going to start this podcast. I got this microphone that was way too sensitive for the room. You could hear the neighbor farting next door on it. It was that sensitive. And eventually I actually had to downgrade because I didn't have all of the foam and everything else that I needed. So I'd bought this sensitive microphone. I tried using it. I realized I didn't have the right room. Then I ended up spending on foam for the walls, and it got marginally better. And the only way I could end up recording my first 50 episodes was by sitting underneath a clothes horse with a really thick duvet over it, and I would sit inside. So if anyone could have seen me, my first 50 podcasts in the height of summer, me passing out underneath a big duvet and this ridiculously oversensitive microphone with my homemade studio. So that was the biggest mistake I made up front. I've still got that microphone, and I still in 6 years have not used it. So I really should eBay it, but it kind of reminds me. So what I want to do really is just share with you a quick few tips on how you might want to start your own podcast. Before we do, there's a few different types of podcasting formats. There's a solo one where you're just chatting away for 10 or 15 minutes about a particular subject, or there's an interview option where you're interviewing somebody in your industry. It's one of the ways I recommend it because that's going to win you their audience as well. They're going to proudly share that they were on the podcast, etc. And then the other way is a panel, which is kind of an interview on steroids, where more people are going to share that they've been on your podcast because you've interviewed several people all at once around a series of topics. For our own podcast, we've grown predominantly through the interview format. And what we've found is interviewing our ideal client the best because they make for great episodes. They share it like crazy. And they also become our client, which is cool. So it's a really great way of emailing somebody saying, hey, would you like to be on our podcast? And you talk to them and you generate a relationship via the podcast. And then lo and behold, at some point they get in touch and they're like, could you give us a quote on such and such? So that's where we've gone. To start it on a budget, i.e. to validate it, and I would say give your podcast at least 6 months before you decide whether or not to can it. There's a few things you can do, and you probably already have the one single device you need, which is your smartphone. You can actually start your podcast with your smartphone because most phones nowadays have got a pretty good microphone built into here. I wouldn't recommend your headset necessarily. I would just recommend you holding it as if you're having a conversation on the phone. Your studio can be your car, or your neighbor's car if you don't have one, or a cupboard, wherever it needs to be. You can simply go somewhere which is quite well padded with your phone and record said podcast. If you're wondering how, if you're doing a solo, you can obviously use the recording app on your phone. However, there is this app here. It's called Ringr. I think it's about 18 quid a month, but there is a free or lower price plan. And what this allows you to do is put an app on your phone, but also get your guest, if you're doing an interview, to put the app on their phone as well. So you get the benefit of the high quality audio on their phone as well. That way we're not having mixed bags of interviews where some people have got a really echoey, horrible room because they're using a little headset, or someone else has got a really over saturated microphone and it's booming out and I sound really quiet, etc. So this is a Ringr that I would highly recommend for that if you are looking to do interview format recordings. The other kind of free hack, if you wanted to do it, would be to simply go live with people on social media, and then you can, in theory, export the audio from that. But I would warn you, it's not going to be the best quality because it's all thoroughly compressed. But it is just one way of getting around that. Now, to edit, there is a free product. If you wanted to edit the quality of your audio, maybe snip out a few ums and ahs. You can see me changing my screen, can't you, etc. Yeah, cool. It's a free and open source cross-platform audio editing software. You can essentially drop in all your tracks, snip out any ums and ahs that you want to, remove any background noise if you need to, and all of that jazz. And there are a gazillion videos on YouTube showing you exactly how to do it. This is a 25-year-old product now, and we've used it for the last 6 years in our podcast. It's absolutely phenomenal. So you don't need to spend any money on, Adobe products or anything like that to get some really good audio for your podcast. So that's kind of the on a budget, spending as little to nothing as you possibly can. If you have, say, up to 100 quid to get started, then I would probably recommend this microphone here. This is the Samsung Q2U recording and podcasting pack. It's obviously not going to be the same as a £300 to £700 microphone, but to be honest, you don't need one. This microphone I'm using here was 50 quid, and I've been using this one for 5 years, and it served my podcast totally fine. It's a very similar model. It's no longer produced, but this Samsung Q2U is a very similar model, and it also comes with the little foam that you need, which you can see on this picture here, which helps reduce some of the pop noises when you're doing a recording. It plugs directly into your computer, which is awesome, and Audacity can record it straight up if you're doing a solo. So it's a phenomenal product if you're going to record anything on your machine. The only other thing I would recommend as well, if you are doing some sort of podcasting on a budget, would be, if you have an echoey room, grab a pack of these and pop them on the wall. Don't use glue dots. I would say get a piece of MDF, stick these onto it, and then screw or hang the MDF on the wall so that it's very easy to remove later. The very first time I put these on the wall, I put spray on adhesive on the backs, put it to the wall, and I've since had to get the room replastered because they all pulled all of the plaster off. It was awful. Finally, let's talk quickly about hosting, and then I'll be done. When you have a podcast, you want it to show up on iTunes, Spotify, and all those places, and you are going to need to host it. And in the vein of what Sarah was saying, you can actually start your podcast on your own website. So if you want to save some money and use the hosting that you already have, you can, at least for a temporary measure, launch your podcast with a plugin as simple as this. This is seriously simple podcasting. It allows you to pop your files on your site and to create what's called an RSS feed that you can give to iTunes or whomever you want to stream your podcasts to, whatever directory. Normally, we would say just submit it to the big guys. So that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and I'll put a link in the chat because I've forgotten all the rest. I've actually done a series on podcasting, so you can go and listen to that if you want. But yeah, there's this one. And the reason I'm saying start on a budget is because you're not really going to know if your podcast is going to fly. These tools will allow you to make something that's good enough that you can monitor for a few months, experiment, see what works, see what doesn't, and then decide whether or not you want to invest more in building up your podcast and your presence. So like I said, I did it the wrong way around. Thankfully, it worked. So all the kit eventually paid for itself. If I was going to do it again, I would have done it this way. And that's pretty much it, unless you got some questions. Oh, Sue, you're on mute.
Thank you,
Kathy.
Lee. That
Kathy's
was
got
brilliant.
a question.
Kathy has a question, yeah.
Why podcasting?
Why podcasting? Because I've got a face for radio. On a serious note, podcast. So for my demographics, the people I was trying to reach are agency owners and also people that work at the agencies. And there's a lot of agencies in the big cities. A lot of these people download audio because they're traveling in and they're listening to stuff. So they have approximately 20 to 30 minutes going in. They can't watch a video necessarily unless they've got YouTube Premium and they've downloaded it in advance. Whereas with their podcast, it's automatically syncing stuff to their phone overnight. And then they're sat on the train, on the tube, driving to work, whatever, wondering what to listen to next. And one of my shows is on their device. So that's why I chose podcasting over everything else. We do have a YouTube channel now as well, which has grown, but that's a hell of a lot of work because I've got to look good for it. I've got to edit it and all sorts of stuff. Whereas a podcast, I can crank them out, in a couple of hours.
So has your audience declined at all with people commuting less over COVID, or has it increased because you've got a different audience, if that makes sense?
It's increased because we've got, but that's because we've been covering subjects about what to do over COVID as well, and things like how to work from home and productivity at home and all that sort of stuff. So you change your content as the world, as things change. So our content's changed slightly. Mental health's been a big one as well. For people who've been struggling with mental health. So we've just adjusted our content and we've seen a consistent growth, which has been good.
Excellent. Sarah.
Sorry if I missed this when my son came in, but how often do you do your podcasts?
Every week.
Every week.
Yeah.
Is that a sort of fairly general thing, or for most people, or is that just something that works for you? Or
it is literally something that works for me. If you are going to launch something, you could choose to do one every 2 weeks, and then see how that goes and have a look at the numbers, etc. For me, I started weekly because I wanted to build up some traction. And then since then, I just got into the flow. We've got a really easy workflow for creating them, for interviewing people. So it's just become a very easy process for us to maintain weekly. And we also don't want to kind of lose that momentum that we have gained. I do know some podcasts that are once a month, and then that gives you an entire month to market that one episode. I'm not sure what the success rate for those people would be though.
Okay, thank you. Cool.
What do you do regarding marketing?
Lots of social media. Although you should talk to 123 Internet, because I believe one of their packages is social media promotion. Do you see what I did there? No, I'm joking. But yeah, we do lots of social media. We take clips out of the podcast where maybe I said something wise, but normally it's the guest who said something wise. And we take that clip out and we do text versions of it with video. And we also do imagery and all that jazz. We've got that big group as well that we can promote to. We've got 4,000 agency owners in our Facebook group. So I can put any link in there, which is nice. And that gets a whole load of traction. So it's been nice to build that up. It's been a long slog though.
Yeah.
6 years. 6 years isn't quick overnight, is it? Overnight success over 6 years.
Steady. Sarah,
where do you get your guests?
Well, that started off on LinkedIn. I was trying to find the people I would love to work with, or the people I felt my audience would get value from. So I'd go through LinkedIn and send them the usual cheesy message: "Would you be up for an interview?" But then, since then, it's become a lot easier because either people contact me to come on the show, or people who I am interviewing will say at the end, "Oh, that was really great. You really should talk to my friend over here who's really big on such and such." So that's then just I continue to get more and more introductions to more and more people now, which is phenomenal. I have just done, though, through COVID, a run of something like 80 solo episodes where we covered a whole load of really important subjects that everyone was asking for in the Facebook group. So it's only been in the last kind of 4 weeks that we've restarted our interview cycle. So we've got a lovely backlog of people to interview, which it's nice not to go and try and have to find people.